live on there, and then we'll get this party started. All right, here we are. TikTok is live. Whew. TikTok is live. YouTube is live. Everyone's having a good time. Everyone is crushing. I'm going to let a few people trickle in because we're going to have a fun talk today about some historical propaganda as it relates to war, since I figured I'd talk about this today since yesterday I touched base on the situation happening with Russia and Ukraine. And what I pointed out yesterday is that if you ask most people to articulate the position of Russia, right, of the enemy, they're not able to do that, which is a direct reflection of our schooling system and how people are conditioned to think in a certain way, where really with every issue that we approach, we as people, or you teaching your students, should really be teaching the skill, and it is a skill, of hearing out all arguments. Because if you don't even know the other side's argument, you don't know if what you believe is accurate. In fact, it's a telltale sign that you are in fact being manipulated, that you are in fact being targeted with propaganda, which of course so many people in the modern world are complete subjects to the whims of the television and the radio, and the entire culture that they consume is carefully crafted by men wearing suits who work at public relation firms that they've never heard of. Right? One of the examples I've given of this, and the reason I like to bring up this example is it's so well documented, is the Gulf War. Because when the American government wanted to get Americans to support the Gulf War, well, that was tough to do, to say, hey, we're going to take our young men, your 18-year-olds, your brothers, your husbands, whatever it might be, your fathers, and we're going to send them across an ocean, right, to have a conflict with people they've never met, and obviously all the horrible things that go along with that. Well, how do you get the public involved to get behind that? Well, and by the way, the example we're going to talk about after this is even more interesting and more relevant to my family. But so what they did was they had this young girl. She was, I forget exactly how old she was. She was a young teenager. And they had her testify in front of Congress, and this was on the PBS, right, public broadcasting station, and everyone's watching, and she's testifying in front of Congress, and she says that the Iraqi soldiers invaded Kuwait, and they went into the hospital, and they took babies out of incubators, little newborn babies, put them on the floor, and left them there. And obviously what happens if you put them on the floor and you leave them there. And of course, the American public was moved by this. Their emotions were touched. And all of a sudden, the public was behind. They supported sending our 18-year-olds, our young men, their sons and their husbands and their fathers, and taking them and sending them across an ocean to go and fight people to the you-know-what that they've never met, and to lose their limbs, and right, because we couldn't allow the babies to be treated that way. Well, as it turns out, it was later revealed that the entire thing was fabricated, that it was put together by Hill and Knowlton, which is a public relations firms. Now, for those of you that don't know the history of the word public relations, that just means propaganda. It was a propaganda firm. Propaganda after World War II had gotten a bad name. So being propagandist, what did they do? They said, oh, we'll just rebrand. And they said, oh, no, we're not propaganda firms, we're public relation firms. So even the word public relations is itself propaganda. But Hills and Knowlton They got together, and the girl was actually the daughter of the American ambassador to Kuwait, and he was pretty determined to get America to join that conflict, and the rest is the Gulf War, right? And everything that comes along with that. And then, of course, we have a whole history of propaganda with the WMDs, right? WMDs in Iraq, right? After, in 2000 and 2003, right? George Bush, that's his son, comes and says, there are weapons of mass destruction. I think it was Colin Powell in Iraq. And, the American public. And look, there's this crazy guy, Saddam Hussein, and he's coming for us. And then, as it turns out, did they have these weapons? No, of course not. Propaganda. Well, the video I posted today, which, sorry about that, TikTok dropped you, on my other channel, which I think is, Halliburton, which I think is even more interesting, is Vietnam. In the Fiverr account? What's the Fiverr account? What's a Fiverr account? Are you talking about Fiverr? Fiverr? No, Fiverr? Fiverr? It's Fiverr.com. Anyway. Yes, that's Fiverr. If you wanted to create an account on Fiverr, you can. And you could be a contractor, making artwork or whatever it might be. So, let's go back to Vietnam. Right, you had this conflict going on in Vietnam, and the American public was in no way behind sending their 18-year-olds across the world, right? Public didn't want to do it. Well, Lyndon B. Johnson and that administration, and, never look at the president, this is what the president did. No. And the handlers of the president. You always have to look above what you're shown, because what we're shown is the Wizard of Oz. Right? You're not shown what happens behind the curtain. So the powers that be wanted America involved in that conflict. And that's usually a consortium of bad actors, the CIA, the Council on Foreign Relations, international bankers, or banksters as I like to call them, right? So they come along and what do? So they come out all of a sudden. It's all over every newspaper in America. Lyndon B. Johnson comes out. There's been an incident. A U.S. naval vessel has been sunk in the Gulf of Tonkin in North Vietnam. Right? They reported to the public that a vessel has been shot down. And the public hears this, and of course, predictable. It's the Hegelian dialectic. They create a problem. They already have the solution. They offer the solution. Everyone says, yeah, let's do it. They create a problem. There's a predictable reaction from the public, and then they come in with their solution, which they had all along. Which their solution in this case was, hey, we need to go to Vietnam, right? And then over 1.3 million people, lives lost later, and it doesn't matter that the Gulf of Tonkin incident never actually happened. It doesn't matter that no ship was actually sunk in the Gulf of Tonkin. Isn't that fascinating? But this is where it gets really good. I would worry if vessels could be shot down. Well, maybe these are flying vessels. Have you thought about that? So, it's all made up anyway. So they might as well have said a flying vessel was shot down because it was made up. So a vessel was sunk in the Gulf of Tonkin. And here's the most interesting part. Now, the commander of that ship, the admiral, was George Morrison. Now, the name Morrison might not mean anything to you until you realize that his son was Jim Morrison of The Doors. So the same time as they were propagandizing Americans to send their 18-year-olds overseas and to go fight people they never met, including my father he volunteered, going to fight people that he never met at risk of everything, right? At the same time, there was this growing movement within the United States of America, this quote-unquote counter culture of all these bands that were coming out. These influential bands were coming out, and they were starting this anti-war movement. And along with the anti-war movement, they were heavily encouraging young people to get involved with narcotics, right? And one of the people doing this was Jim Morrison of The Doors. Now, Jim Morrison, one of the most influential rock and roll stars of this time, he was the son of who? The same admiral, the same commander of that ship that was never shot down, or I'm sorry, never sunk in the Gulf of Tonkin. Right? So, on the one hand, they're encouraging America's bravest young men, very traditional people. This is where it gets really good, right? They're encouraging, go overseas, have your limbs blown off, have your lives destroyed, all these people, all these lives lost. And then on the home front, as all these brave men are gone, they are creating this division, saying, this anti-war movement, and specifically they focused it on the soldiers themselves. They were like, look at these soldiers overseas, look what bad people they are, look how bad their values are. They want to go overseas, and you see what they're doing here? So they're creating this division within American culture, and this is how they broke traditional American culture. And then at the same time, they have all these bands, all of a sudden they're glorifying, and this was all part of an MK Ultra program, which is all well documented in the church committee. This is part of what's something called the Tavistock Institute, or a lot of these bands were directly put in place by something called the Tavistock Institute out of Britain, which has to do with British intelligence and MI6. Right, so it's all very intertwined, and they're encouraging young people to do these hallucinogenics and all these drugs. And what they did was they successfully broke traditional American culture. They were funding Gloria Steinem and the feminist movement. So they're pushing feminism. They're pushing narcotic culture. They're pushing. They're mocking people that wait until marriage. They're saying those people are squares. Those are the way your parents thought, and your parents are the same people that support that horrible thing that's happening overseas. So as they're doing this, they're using this counterculture movement, right? They're using the war and music, counterculture, to create this schism within American culture and to completely shatter traditional American values, right? And now this is how they created this culture where there's this hookup culture, where young women are taught that it's oppression if they get married, it's oppression if they have a family, that their liberation comes from working for a corporate boss who will give them a kick on the butt on the way out the door when they're 65 years old, right? It's this premarital sex is relentlessly pushed to the point in which children feel like they're a failure if they decide to wait, and that's the real travesty about it, right? There shouldn't be this relentless peer pressure to be promiscuous, but that's what they push because this is how they broke American culture, right? So this is why teaching your children about propaganda is so important. This is why I started writing the Cubs to Bears children book series, books not just about the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, but really about teaching children their rights. This is why the first live class that I started teaching to members of my homeschool community was called Foundations of Propaganda, which teaches children how the mechanisms of propaganda that they should be familiar with so that they can successfully identify when they are being propagandized by the powers that be, right? So when you understand this history, when you understand the Gulf War, when you understand what happened with the Gulf of Tonkin and Vietnam and the ship not actually being sunk and a false you-know-what operation, right? That George Morrison was the commander of that ship and his son, Jim Morrison, just happened to be elevated by a very corrupt industry pushing this anti-war movement right as the authoritative news and everything is purposely pushing the war movement, and they're blaming the soldiers themselves. and they're creating this schism in American culture, and they're pushing this narcotic culture, and they're saying that, you know what, narcotics and rock and roll, right? Promiscuity, narcotics, and rock and roll, right? So, this was all carefully crafted. This was by design. This is planning from organizations like the Central You-Know-What Agency, like the Tavistock Institute out of Britain, and it was all designed to break those traditional American values, okay? It was designed to break the idea that what it meant to live a good life, what it meant to be successful was to work hard, to live within your means, to get married, to be a good husband, to be a good wife. That before this culture broke out, that people that so-called player culture, where someone would go around and sleep with all these other people, they would be shamed in public culture. But now it's the opposite. Now it's, if you're not being promiscuous, you're shamed. And you have these 12, 13-year-olds who are relentlessly pressured to be promiscuous, and then because of that, you have a extremely high amount of broken families, right? And people that are born into families with just one parent, right? At the same time, they're pushing this culture, and all of this was designed, when you say what values, family, it's all designed to break family. To have people that are broken, without family, come from broken homes, who are abused, who look to narcotics, and because of that, they become very reliant on the system. You see? All of it was designed to break the traditional American family. And everything you see happening today, you better believe, is designed to break the traditional American family. Which is why people like myself and people like, sup Yosef, people like myself and people like Owen Benjamin and people that push these traditional values are so demonized by the mainstream system. The system will look at us and say, you're the bad man. Well, what do I advocate for? What does the bad man advocate for? I advocate for living within your means, to not keeping up with the Joneses because we're controlled through financial leverage. I advocate for personal responsibility, for starting your own business, for hiring your friends, like-minded people. I advocate for educating your children so they can't be indoctrinated into the system. Homeschooling them, teaching them their rights. I advocate for getting married early, being a husband, being a wife, being a father, right? Being a mother, right? Because this is how you actually achieve freedom, right? But they want you in debt. They want you reliant on a corporation so that you're a wage slave. They want you to, if you're having a family, for it to be a broken family, to be out of wedlock, so that children are growing up without two parents, so that the one parent has to work, they have to put them into daycare and they can be raised by the state. Or even you have two parents and because of the financial situation, they feel like they both have to work, and because of that, because they both have to work, again, the child is being raised into that indoctrination system. They're going to daycares, they are going to public schools, which are just glorified daycare indoctrination systems, right? So all of this has been systematically created to break traditional America. But the beautiful thing about that is there is always a pushback. And right now we are seeing a resurgence of traditional American values. We are seeing a resurgence of people that are selling their homes and downsizing to get out of debt. We are seeing a resurgence of people that are realizing that they can achieve the real American dream, which is to own their own business outside of debt, so that they can be in control of how they live their life and the decisions they make in their life. People who are realizing that marriage and family is liberation. Having a group of people around you that will do anything for you, that will love you, is liberation. That the way to happiness is not through keeping up with the Joneses, but through spirituality, through God, through family, through children. That nothing will make you happier than the smile on the face of a 3-year-old. That you should raise your children, not let someone else raise your children, that you have a responsibility to educate them so that they grow up to be independent and free, so that they can be harbingers of liberty and basic human decency. And when you start to do all these things and you grow your own food so that you can't be controlled by the grocery stores, and they say that you have to have this type of passport or you have to cover your face in order to feed your family. People are getting back to traditional values. People are getting back to personal responsibility. And because of that, the future is so bright and is going to be an absolutely wonderful place. I'm going to read a little bit about what you guys are saying. Then I'll probably talk a little bit about homeschooling, education, what I'm doing, and we could take it from there. But I really wanted to cover just the history of some war propaganda with everything going on in the world. Check out epic movie called Amish Grace. Came out in 2010. Never heard of it. So if anyone, I can't endorse it because I haven't heard of it, but I could take a mental note here. Amish Grace. Joseph is recommending that. So we'll see what that's all about, and you guys can get back to me on that. So I'm going to go back, read through some of your comments, and like I said, I'm going to talk more about homeschooling, educating our children, what I'm doing right now with my own business, and how we're educating children to live free and independent lives, because what's happening in the public school system is a travesty. They are not, bro, what you're doing is making big things. Thank you. What they are doing and what we are doing is, what the public school system is doing is educating 18-year-olds who aren't capable of living an independent life. In fact, I argue that the public school system has a 95% failure rate because 95% of 18-year-olds are utterly incapable of living independently. They're reliant on the government, they're reliant on corporations, they are reliant on their parents, and that is unacceptable. If you have a child for 15 years and you're educating them, they should be capable of living free, independent when they are 18 years old. Your seeds and mushroom stuff are showing up Thursday. Bear Mini Mom, you're such a legend. Halliburton made a killing, absolutely. I love reading your books to my daughter. She isn't fully understanding it yet, but I will keep reading. Yeah, just keep familiarizing her with the story. It's, the beautiful thing about children's stories is that as they start to grow, the stories will have more and more meaning. And the way I write the books, I actually put a lot of hidden meaning inside the books, so that as children grow, they'll begin to pick up on more and more aspects of the story, even to the point where they'll look back as adults and still say, wow, I never realized that was the meaning behind this story. And I do that on purpose, and I try to put layers and depth into my writing. And, the most beautiful form of artwork reveals truth or expresses truth, which is why people say modern art is so broken. Modern art is terrible. Well, the reason why modern art is terrible is because the purpose of it is no longer to reveal truth. It is not the expression of truth. It is the expression of nonsense. It's the expression of lies. And because of that, it's ugly. But what I do is true artistic expression. And there's so many people out there doing amazing things. There's this guy Made by Jim Bob who's changing the world one meme at a time. There's the guy Ben Garrison, amazing artist, Anomaly with his music, right? These are true expressions. Tom McDonald with his music, which I don't agree with a lot of what Tom says, but I think he comes from a place of truth, and that's all that matters. In fact, I'm probably even doing him a disservice by saying I don't agree with everything he says. Obviously, I don't. I don't agree with everything Jim Bob says. I don't agree with everything most of the people I mentioned say, because I'm my own independent person, but I respect people who are doing true art, true artistic expression, and what they are doing is rooted in what they believe to be truth, and because of that, their art form is beautiful. It's about PA and the Amish community. When a man came into the school, the Amish, there was, they tried some of their nonsense machine. One of the things they do to try to get us to give up our rights, I'm not going to get into it. I'm not going to get into it. It's sometimes the juice isn't worth the squeeze, but a lot of these incidents that are horrible, whether they're real or not, they're used to take away our rights, specifically our Second Amendment rights. And that happened with the Amish. And, you know, they were like, oh, you see, you know, Amish, are you going to give up your rights now? You're going to surrender your, you know, your stuff? And the Amish just said, no, it's just one deranged man. We forgive him. And they just forgave him. And they just moved on. And because they understood that liberty trumps security. And that actually, in this case, it is the liberty that if you exercise your liberty will give you the ultimate security. But you do have to be careful how you talk about these things. So they won't take the ticket. So you only get control of your life if you own a business. You have more control of your life if you own a business. I mean, I work when I want to. I work from where I want to. I don't have a boss. No boss could come in and tell me that I have to get a procedure. Otherwise, you know, I can't continue to work. So yes, you absolutely gain freedom by owning a business. Not to mention, when you own a business, you don't cap. You know, usually with a job, even if it's a high-paying job, you cap your earning potential. When you own a business, your work could be exponential. So as you build, you start to achieve layers and layers of layers to the point where it could get to the point where you start making a ridiculous amount of money. And that's why it's funny, because people will look at like, oh my God, I'm not talking about myself here. I'm not there yet. But like, you look at some of these like really titans of industry and they're like, oh, you own a business. Oh, why should you have so much? And it's like, you haven't seen all the hours that person put in. Like right now, like where my business is at, people see Classical Learner and Homeschools Connected, and like they're like, oh, you know, it must be nice to own a business. You got like the must be nice people. Must be nice. Like, all right, like you could do stuff yourself instead of being a jealous loser. But like, I'm not saying that's what you are. I get that a lot. But like, what they don't see is literally for years, me working behind the scenes like 6 to 7 hours a day for years. And that's on top of a full-time job. So working a full-time job for 8 hours, then working another 6 to 7 hours at night, not getting paid for it, working for free, right? And now, years later, now I have a successful business, and people will come along and be like, oh, it must be nice to have your business. And it's like, you don't understand how much work people put in. And I don't talk about this to be a prick. Like, I encourage people to do this. Like, every one of you should be building up a business or a side hustle. Just put in the work, because one day you might get to a situation where the world changes and you'll find yourself where you'll have some flexibility, some leverage in which you could structure your life the way you want to. And like, I don't know, or don't, but. Oh, cool. So Yosef is watching. Curtis Stone is another absolute legend. Curtis Stone is the urban farmer. And now he's the bushman, but he's the urban farmer, and he actually teaches people how to start small farms. And Yosef is learning from Curtis Stone on how to start his own microgreen business, where you grow microgreens. Microgreens are cool because microgreens, they grow in a week, right? Oh, I just got a Pinterest follower. For those of you that don't know, my Pinterest is popping. Classical Learner Pinterest. I've been posting on it every day. I just started a homeschool getting started series. It is absolutely crushing. And if you ain't on my Pinterest, where you at? So Pinterest, Classical Learner, get at it. Seriously, go, get at it. Watch the videos, like them, comment, share. Drive my algorithm. Support good people. Support what you like or it goes away. By the way, that's the truest thing on the planet. Like, so many people are in like a mindset where they're like, they'll spend $10 on Netflix and they're like, oh, but I can't support this guy who it's crazy to me. But anyway, so Curtis Stone, absolute legend. He teaches a lot of things, but among them microgreens. Microgreens are really cool. You can grow them in 1 week. So you get these cartons, like 100 little seed containers you could plant at once. and then you plant your seeds, and you know, if you get 10 of them, you could literally plant 1,000 seeds. So you plant them. Usually you get growing lights. You want to do it indoors usually. Some people do it outdoors. But you plant your seeds and they grow in 1 week. So then in 1 week, if you did 10 of those cartons, you have 1,000 plants to sell, right? How much could you sell those 1,000 plants for, right? So there's people, the turnover is very quick. And usually they'll secure a restaurant, a couple of restaurants, or maybe they'll do like a subscription model where people pay them monthly and then every week they deliver microgreens to that person's door. So it's a cool business model, and Joseph is learning it, where you could earn a living. That could be your side hustle that you start, like when you get home at night, instead of putting your feet up and watching TV, you can start a microgreen business. And you can learn it from a guy like Curtis Stone. Everyone should support Curtis Stone. Curtis Stone is an absolute legend, and he is a wrecking ball of human liberty, as I myself am a wrecking ball of human liberty. Curtis Stone is teaching people how to do this. And actually, as I set up my homestead, one of the things I'm going to be doing, I already plan on it, is I'm going to set up a one-on-one consultation with Curtis, because he offers that service. So as soon as I'm ready, I'm going to set up a consultation. I'm going to get drone footage of my homestead. And I'm going to say, Curtis, this is what I want to do. Do you have any suggestions as to what you would do? And Curtis will lay out point by point, this is what I would do on this part of the property. You know, you want this tree facing the south because it's getting the sun. Curtis Stone, absolute legend. And I could not speak higher of a man. In fact, if you ask me about Curtis Stone, this is what I would say. If they said, who is Curtis Stone? I would look at you and simply say, he is a moral man. And if anyone who knows me, the highest compliment I can give a person from my worldview is I say, he is a moral man. In fact, another man who gets demonized, who I absolutely love, and I don't care what's in my life. And when I wrote the Cubs to Bears books, the one book is actually based off of him. The social media book is based off of his story. Interesting side note on that. And when I wrote that book, I signed it to him, and I signed it to his children. And I explained to his children what the book was about. And I said, your father, and then I just put a moral man. And they'll be able to see that one day. But interesting, yeah. So that book is about his life, and he was getting like $20,000 a night doing stand-up comedy or something like that at the Improv in California, right? So if you look at that book, I'm not saying it's the Improv, but if you look at the picture, it sure looks a lot like the Improv, the picture I use in one of the scenes of that book. And there was recently a viral video on, I wasn't even going there. And I was so tempted. But there was a video of a stand-up comedian who was talking about a very controversial subject. And she was talking about this subject that, let's just say it's dominated the last 2 years. You know, let's just say it's really dominated the last 2 years, this subject. And it's very hard to talk about online. And she's talking about this subject, very controversial. And she's talking about how she did everything that the authorities tell her to do. She did everything the authorities tell her to do. I'm sure you guys could figure out what that is. And then right as she says that, and nothing bad has happened to me, Jesus loves me the most. And as that, she literally, you saw her eyes go out, and she fell to the floor, cracked her head, and cracked open her skull. Do a search for that video. Well, then look at the picture, look what's behind her, and then look at Free Speech, Social Media Beep, and the First Amendment, the book I wrote. Fascinating. Those are the Cubs to Bears books. You can find them at www.classicallearner.com. Another thing that I do with the Cubs to Bears books, I teach a Foundations of Propaganda class every Thursday at 10:30 a.m. and it's for elementary school and middle school level students. And I actually use the books to teach how propaganda functions. So like in the book, Free Speech, Social Media Beep, and the First Amendment, Stand Up Air calls out the Saving Puppy Center. They're not really saving puppies, which is propaganda in itself, right? They are feeding them to hungry coyotes. So, you know, he calls them out, bunnies, puppies, things that moo. Coyotes turn them into stew. How can animals be such dupes? Coyotes just want piglet soups. He's doing stand-up comedy. Then he's accused of being a thought criminal. He can't do stand-up comedy anymore. Well, so that happens. He's blah, blah, blah. He's accused of being a thought criminal. And then he takes his message to the Blue Mountain Birds. Carry my message as far as you reach. Carry my message with tweets, tweets, tweets. And they're flying his tweets all around the farm. And the news roosters say he's anti-bird. He's an anti-you-know-whatter. He's an anti-bird, and he's not allowed to tweet anymore. So it's showing children how truth speakers are labeled derogatory terms, and those terms are used to silence people off of the public discourse. The government does not love you. They only love themselves. But keep in mind, that's a trick in itself. See, the government has been co-opted by big corporations and banking interests and a lot of corrupt people. But it is a government by the people. So that government is just a tool. Now, you're being out-leveraged right now. We're being out-leveraged. But as we learn our rights more and we understand how to defend our rights more, and there's a lot, you got to understand, there's a lot that goes into that. Hardwood Bear, good man. Hardwood Bear, my brother. You're late, but whatever. You got to learn our rights more. And this goes on, this gets into like, you're like, what do you mean just learn your rights? No, this gets into like the Organic Act of 1871, where, I'm not going to get too into it, but basically like, you know how like when you're in a town, it's the incorporated town of blah, right? Well, there's two versions of that town. There's the corporation, and then there's the government version. And I know that's confusing, but like, it's the same concept. Is in 1871, they created the corporation of the United States of America. And when they did that, they created a secondary jurisdiction, right, in which you became subject to the terms and conditions of a corporation. It's very tricky stuff. But anyway, people are learning to push back against that and really exercise their rights, because the Bill of Rights is, outside of the Bible, is the greatest document in the history of humanity. The Bill of Rights, outside of the Bible, is the greatest document in the history of humanity. Yeah, no, he's right about that. That's why, like, people like, get rid of the government. Yeah, you're going to get rid of the government? And then how do you stop me from showing up at your house and taking what's yours? How you stop me? I am the government now. Well, luckily for you, I'm a nice guy, but the evidence around me tells me that a lot of people aren't. So I know the anarchists are like, oh, just get rid of government. But yeah, that's not a real solution. It's laughable. It's laughably flawed. No, there will always be power struggles, and we have to use the government to the best of our ability to leverage power back in our direction. And the reason it's gone so far in one direction is because people have been pacified through the public school system. People no longer take personal responsibility. They're in debt. They don't know their rights, right? Yes. They're in debt. They don't know their rights. And because of that, they're just out-leveraged. And we could get back to that, and we are, but government's just a tool. It's like a hammer. In fact, I was part of an arbitration, and thankfully not a lawsuit, but an arbitration against Patreon. So like when everyone like talks their big game, and they're like, oh, what's happening with social media is so big. Okay, yeah, this is the thing a lot of people don't know about me. I was part of an arbitration against Patreon. There was like 150 of us, and they wound up suing 77 of us or something like that. And I wasn't one of the people they sued, but I was one of the arbitrators. And we filed arbitration against Patreon after they kicked Owen Benjamin off of their platform. And we ended up running on them of over $2 million. We ran over a $2 million bill on them. And afterwards, the arbitration was so powerful that Amazon, YouTube, and all of these big Silicon Valley companies actually changed their terms and conditions and how they do arbitration because of what we did to Patreon. So, again, the government is a tool. A court of law is a tool. And we all have the capability to use that tool. It's just we have been so pacified that we don't know how to use it. And I'm not saying that I even do. I'm just saying that I've been a part of something that is an example of that, which is interesting that, it's like, it's so funny because, like, I've gotten to the point where I have a lot of accomplishments in my life, and, like, that's a really big accomplishment. I mean, that's a really cool thing that I was a part of, And, like, I don't even, like, until this moment, it didn't even really dawn on me, like, that is a fascinating aspect of my story. But, anyway. Was starting a business difficult in the beginning? Well, it's not that difficult, undifficult. It's just you have to learn. So understand that just because you do something and it's not successful, you didn't fail at anything. You just learned, okay, maybe this wasn't quite the right way to go about it, and you make adjustments. And then you learn and make adjustments. Do a lot of reading as you're doing this. Just some books that I really like that have had big influences on me. Think and Grow Rich, The 4-Hour Work Week, the entire Rich Dad Poor Dad series, how to win friends and influence people. So you do your reading and you just learn and do adjustments. One of the groups I'm a member of is the Wealth Squad, which is Christopher Johnson's group, which had a positive impact on me, and he has courses in a variety of different areas that you could take as well. So, you just put in the time, you start your business, start small, you're not trying, I mean, maybe you're trying to be, but you don't have to be Microsoft, you start small. There's so many cool things you could get into. You could get into drop shipping. One of the new businesses my wife just started is she is doing, retail arbitrage, I think it's called, where she's buying products for cheap on like clearance racks and she's flipping them on Amazon. So there's a lot of different things you can do. But yeah, I mean, you could design your own shirts on sites like Shopify, market them and sell them online. Like you could start your own clothing line. Like there's so many cool things you can do. Don't be afraid. Pick something you're passionate about that you like won't mind putting a lot of time in. And so, that's what it is. If everyone owned a business, society would fall apart. The world needs works. Yeah, well, luckily, I'm not here educating the slaves. I'm here educating the crushers. So, you could take that mindset and throw it out, because if you want, you should only be worried about your situation in your life. And in your life, it is very advantageous to start a side hustle. And in your life, it is very advantageous to raise your children, to educate your children the way I advocate for, which is the 3 primary points of we teach children critical thinking in the process of learning, we teach them skill development, and we get them entrepreneurial experience. And if you take those 3 aspects, if you raise your child as a critical thinker, when they study history, you have them read primary documents on people from both sides of events and make up their own mind. When they study science, you have them doing the scientific method itself rather than just memorizing. You have them grading their own English work. You have them doing original research. Critical thinkers, right? We follow their interests to develop skills. So, if your child is interested in art, then we have them take courses in graphic design, digital illustration, painting, and really digital animation, where they can make Disney Pixar style art. We have them take classes in photography and videography and just build this wide-ranging skill set. And then we use their skills to get them entrepreneurial experience. So maybe they design their own t-shirt design. They sign up for a site like Shopify and Printful. They actually start their own clothing brand. Then you have them build their own website, which is a skill. You have them read books on social media marketing, start an Instagram page, start promoting their clothing line. And who knows, if they do that for 5 or 6 years, by the time they're 18, they might have a successful clothing line, right? But the point is that we develop skills. You know, maybe they won't want to do that, but if they don't want to do that, they'll still have graphic design skills. They'll still have digital illustration skills. They'll still know how to build a website. They'll still be familiar with social media marketing. They'll still know photography. They'll still know videography. They'll still know digital animation. By the way, I coach parents on how to do this. Members of my homeschool community, Homeschools Connected, they don't just get access to my propaganda class. They don't just get access to our study on the media industrial complex, the medical industrial complex, the military industrial complex. They don't just get access to our year-long nature unit study in which they get entrepreneurial experience, but they actually get access to the other mothers and fathers in our community as well as myself. We have an open line of communication, an inbox, and I actually coach all of the members of my community on how to do this unschooling with their children. What's up, man?
Dad, look, I got his kite on the kite handle.
Nice. Is it flying today?
Yeah.
Is it natural wind or do you have to make your own wind?
It's natural wind.
Natural wind? Okay. All right, let me see you fly it.
Fly.
I love it, Papa Bean. Crushing. And that's my homeschool community. That's classicallearner.com. Homeschools Connected, and if you join, use the promo code together because you get it's only $10 a month if you do that. Let me see that. You know how this got in here? Oh, you know what? This was where Aunt Erica came from. This says Orlando. They were on vacation in Florida. So this is. Anyway, can you go throw that in the garbage?
Well, why are they leaving it?
I don't think they meant to leave it here. I think they probably dropped it by accident.
Why?
Well, not on purpose. They probably didn't realize. Maybe it fell out of their pocket, or right, because they wouldn't litter, because that's not good.
Yeah, they didn't litter.
Right.
They don't litter.
Brady's very passionate about littering, and he does really great work around the town. And he actually finds garbage, he picks it up, and he throws it away because Brady knows that plastic bags and bottles could be dangerous to animals, and we do what we can to protect the animals. So. All right. Is homeschool hard to start? I have no education, so I'm worried I won't be able to do it directly. Well, to start, you can check out my Homeschool Getting Started series on Pinterest. So that would be a nice crash course on homeschooling, Classical Learner. But no, homeschool's not hard to start. You have to notify your district of your intent to homeschool. So you can find that paperwork at hslda.org. You want to familiarize yourself with the regulations. Again, use hslda.org, Homeschool Legal Defense Association. From there, you want to set up your record keeping. Again, I post videos on that on my Pinterest about the record keeping. Brady gets knocked down, but he gets up again. You're never going to keep him down. Right, so the record keeping, you want to familiarize yourself with unschooling, Charlotte Mason, Montessori, and unschooling. And then you could choose a curriculum as your base, and you really don't have to jump into it. Like, don't be intimidated. You don't have to replicate public school. You don't have to do 8 hours a day of schooling, of formal schooling. Start with, maybe 1 or 2 hours at most of formal schooling, and just kind of ease into it. You don't have to do math every day, science every day. You could kind of work. You have a lot of flexibility, and if something's not working, you throw it out and just try something else. So no worries. And if you ever have any questions, you could always come here. I'm more than happy to answer any specific questions you have related to homeschooling. And again, I'd be remiss to say that, if you join Homeschools Connected, you literally get access to a community of homeschooling legends, mothers and fathers. including myself, an open line of communication, and I'd be more than happy to coach you through whatever, questions you have on there. It's not hard to find it. It's fun to learn alongside my children. Thank you. I did need to hear that. Thank you for the finger heart, whoever sent that. Ooh, nickels. Ooh. I don't think it's hard. I homeschool. I enjoy it. My kids do too. I finally ordered your books yesterday. One day I'll give it my newest little baby nephew. Well, it's about time you ordered the Cubs. I know a large number of homeschool families. If they're either super smart or very dumb, okay. Well, hopefully they're super smart. Just found out my 10-year-old is being bullied. It's taking everything in me to get to her right now, to go get her right now. It's homeschool. Why are you nervous about homeschooling? What do the kids do all day, like the rest of the day? I mean, you can structure your homeschool in any way. I'll talk about that. Hold on. You can do a few hours of traditional schooling depending on day. So look, yeah, Eddie. Oh no, Coley, his kite just got stuck somewhere. So, one of your biggest advantages with homeschooling is the informal schooling you can do, which is why it's so superior. I mean, it's superior to public school in nearly every way. I mean, when you're talking about math, right? When you're talking about math, let's say your child falls behind in basic addition, right? And it's time to move on to multiplication. Well, once the class moves on, they're moving on. And if your child hasn't mastered addition, he's not going to get multiplication, right? So now he falls behind. He has an aversive relationship with math, and he starts to hate it. Let's say he's ahead in math. Well, now he could do addition after one day, and he has to sit there for 2 months. Again, math becomes boring, and it's just not something he's going to love. When your children study history, they're being told to memorize this or memorize that. They don't know if it's true. They're memorizing what's in the textbook. They're memorizing what's in the teacher says, and they're not They're not doing critical thinking. Well, you could have them read primary documents and actually formulate. So they could read Abraham Lincoln and they could read Stonewall Jackson, and they can make up their own mind about what actually happened with the Civil War, right? Like they can think critically about these events and formulate their own unique understanding, right? And it goes so on and so on. And then when you get to the advantages, like everything with life becomes education with homeschool. So like when you're cooking, you can do mathematics. When you're cooking alchemy, you can do science. But then on top of it, like if your child enjoys cooking, you can get them books that are specifically designed to make them like master chefs, and they can really start becoming masters in the culinary arts, right? So then what you do is you get them entrepreneurial experience. So you say, oh, you like cooking? Well, you know what? Instead of doing formal stuff today, we're going to do a project. So for the next 3 weeks or month, I want you to plan a yard sale. And they could look into the marketing. They can make yard signs, do the artwork. They can say, okay, you got to get better at art, take classes in art. They can make yard signs. They can learn videography and make video invitations for grandma, grandpa, auntie, uncle, your friends, or anyone you want to send them to. Or if they're older and you want to do something and like instead of at your house, like maybe they're doing like a yard sale but at a more public place, they could actually do social media marketing, right? And now they bake their goods that they plan this whole event. I mean, think about the organization, the experience. They plan this event and they host the event. People show up. They buy their food. They actually make real money. Then you introduce them to financial literacy through books like The Money Ninja, The Investment Ninja, Finance 101. They get interested in They get more interested in financial literacy. You could start playing monthly games of Monopoly. You can move forward to monthly games of cash flow for kids.
Look what I found!
Oh, where'd you find it?
It was in the plants.
Which plants?
The plants back there.
Get out of town. What do you think happened?
The wind blew it down.
The wind blew the kite down?
Yeah,
Brady, that's amazing.
but it's tangled.
Did the string rip or did it just... I guess the string was already ripped.
Well, can you untangle this?
I don't have my knife. If you take it to mommy, I think your best bet would be to cut that and then to tie a new handle to it. Right? So then you have them do this bake sale. Now think of all the skills they're learning. Think of all the experience they're getting. Think of the mindset development. And you can do this with one thing after another. And then keep in mind, one of the things people get confused about, and they're like, oh, well, what if they don't want to cook when they're older? It's not about the cooking. It's about the skills they gain. They learn the organization. They learned the planning. They learned the art. They learned the videography. They learned the financial literacy, right? And so and then what you do is you just continue to escalate. So if they have success with that, then you can have them do it again and have them collect the numbers and the emails of people that buy cookies, and they could actually offer a subscription service. So say, hey, if you pay me $5 a month, and think about this, you could do this with a 10-year-old. If you pay me $5 a month, once a month, maybe the first Sunday of every month, I will bake these cookies and drop them off at your house, right? And you could show them, okay, how do you set up a subscription service online? And they could actually, at 10 years old, 12 years old, get people to sign up for a subscription service. $5 a month, and they make the cookies that they love to make, and then they deliver them. And then maybe as they get older, they start to do some social media marketing. And do you see how they can just grow and develop all these skills? Homeschool is superior to public school in nearly every way. And as long as you as the parent are going to put in the effort, your children will do absolutely phenomenal. And again, I'd be remiss to say, yes, it's in my self-interest to say, it's in your interest too. My homeschool community is absolutely phenomenal. And when you join it, you get access to myself and all of these other homeschool parents that are more than happy to help you out with anything you need help with. So again, that's classicallearner.com, homeschool's connected. And again, use the promo code together. It's $10 a month. Mrs. Pac-Man, good morning. So I've been going at this for about an hour. If you guys have any more questions, I'll be happy to answer them. And if not, I have things I need to do.
Dad, Mom said she can't untangle. Could you try?
You want this untangled?
Yeah.
I could try, but you got to give me a few minutes because this is pretty tangled here.
So try. Oh.
So yeah, and anyway, also the other thing you want to think about is socialization, right? Because I know a lot of people worry about that. So just as an example with Brady, we have baseball tonight. It's Tuesday. He's on a baseball team. Yeah, Papa.
I think it got tangled around the gutter.
It got tangled on the gutter?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, but it came loose.
Yeah, but how did the wind break it off the gutter?
Well, how do you think the wind knocked it off the gutter?
I don't know. I wasn't home to see that.
Oh, you didn't see? Do you have any theories or hypothesis?
I think the wind was pretty strong because it probably did that.
It's pretty strong. Well, was the wind weak or strong when we were at the park last night?
Strong,
It was strong, right?
right?
So do you think the wind was weak or strong here?
Strong, right?
I would think if it was strong at the park, I would think it was strong here.
Yeah.
So I guess it was strong enough to knock our kite down from the roof. It's pretty exciting. So as I just explained with the park,
It flies again still. It flies still. Dad, it flies still.
it flies still?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it doesn't look damaged.
Yeah.
It still looks pretty aerodynamic.
Yeah. I'm glad the piece didn't come off.
I'm glad too. That's exciting.
The floppy feels really good.
But let Daddy finish up, okay? So, you know, like the social part. As you can see, my son's a little social butterfly. But it's pretty. But yesterday we were at the park, right? Well, today at 5 o'clock, we have baseball. He's on a baseball team. On Fridays, he has gymnastics. He's in a class with 50 other students. On Friday nights, he has jujitsu. He's in a class with, I guess, 20 or 30 other students. On Sundays, he attends a classroom at our church. So that's another class with another 20, 30 students. And then we're at the park multiple days throughout the week, and we have play dates with other children multiple days throughout the weeks. And then on top of it, he's constantly in town. We're at museums, we're at aquariums, we're at gaming centers, like Dave and Buster's. We're at restaurants, stores, because my wife and I ourselves are always out in town. So socialization is only a problem if you don't make it a priority. So you just treat it like anything else. So, all right, guys, I think I'm going to call. Oh, let me see. You guys did have some questions. I make redheads. Can you inbox me on Homeschools Connected? I'm going to get you set up with the nature unit study. You have to start it right away because I want you planting seeds. You're a little bit behind. That's fine. I'd like to see you planting seeds in the next 2 weeks. Some of our members are already planting seeds this week. So inbox me and we'll get you set up. Just remind me. I'll tag you where you need to be and you can start the nature unit study. Or Coley, if you could tag her. Yeah, socialization is only a problem if the parents don't socialize the children. Like, yeah, if you leave them isolated all the time, that's a problem, Like I said, Brady and Aubrey are interacting with people 7 days a week, so.
I think it was so strong that it broke off and some of the string was still on our roof.
Oh no, is some of the string still on the roof?
Yeah.
We're gonna need a big ladder to get that down because that roof's pretty high up.
Well, you could leave it there. I think something will knock it down. The rain, or the sun, or the wind.
The rain, the sun, or the wind?
Yeah.
All right, I guess we'll see what happens. We'll take notes. What's your prediction? What do you think will happen?
I think that we will have a ladder because Papa took a ladder. Wind.
You're going with the wind? All right. My prediction is the sun. So yours is the wind. We're going to see what happens. We have seeds to plant now. Just take a look at the unit study. You could probably, I might have you do some of it a little backwards just to catch up. Because what I really, really want to see happen right away is I'd like your children to draw a map of their property, of your property. So the house, the backyard, the front yard, whatever it might be, landmarks, things like that. Spend a day tracking the sun. So like they'll wake up at 7 a.m. Where's the sun over the property? All right, where is it at 12 p.m.? Where is it at 3 p.m.? They draw little suns onto the map. It's a clock. And then from there, they could choose the best gardening location, and we could get you caught up. So thanks for the info and the new ideas I got today. I enjoyed it. Yeah, we're here every day at 9:30 a.m., so definitely come back. And if you're here, you're a member of the Unschoolables. So definitely check that out. My website is www.classicallearner.com. So, so I mean, yeah, send me info about the sun observations and garden. You could do what I just described, where you have the children draw out the property like a map almost, and then once they draw that out, spend another day where they track the sun's location in the sky, and they mark the sun's location in the sky during different times of the day on that map, and then they could choose the best garden location. And if you want to be a part of our year-long nature unit study, like I said, that's just, it's what we're doing in Homeschools Connected. So we'd love to have you. I give updates on, so you could probably follow along with it, with what I talk about here. But if you want the actual like lesson plans in front of you and everything, and the community, then that's the way to go. Yeah, the community, if you go to classicallearner.com, and you'll see Homeschools Connected. Click on Homeschools Connected, follow the links,